from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. Let's see. Number's still the same, 833-482-5337, 8334 Valdez. And man, there's a few things we're going to get into today. Not the craziest Friday out there, so we're going to have a little fun with the show tonight. But definitely a few things here. Of course, the Democrats are out there. Joe Biden, Joe El Baboso Biden, and Que Mala Eres are out there singing their praises, right? They're singing their own praises, saying that unemployment has dropped to 4.1%. Stocks are hitting record highs, and the job growth has surged 254,000. But of course, every time they make an announcement about jobs, they have to turn around and correct it, right? And adjust it downward. And that's exactly what they're always doing. So you really can't trust the job growth in this administration, sadly. There's a couple of interesting tidbits about the job numbers out there as laid out in townhall.com today. And I'll just share a little bit with that with you. The quote was, "Today we received good news for the American worker and families with more than 250 new jobs in September." That was, how they started it. That's the statement that President Biden put out. But the Trump team's making points that are very poignant, letting people know that Americans are still far off now, far worse off than they were when Biden took office, and noting that most of these new jobs are going to foreign-born workers. Listen to here's what the Trump team said. Over the past year alone, 825,000 American citizens lost employment, while most jobs went to foreign-born workers, with 1.2 million foreign-born workers gaining employment. Full-time jobs are still down, 251,000. That's 251,000 fewer full-time jobs, where part-time workers are jumping ship, and they're coming on the Make America Great Again movement. So the jobs report like these are always getting revised down. You can't trust this administration. I just said that. So it looks like great minds think alike, right? And to report the actual data. And that's true. That's true. There was 1 million fake jobs that were there where they lied to us over the last year. So why would anybody believe any report coming out of the administration, right? But Joe Biden, this is what he does. And Joe Biden also, he was in the briefing room today, and he making the rare appearance, right? Because, he doesn't spend a lot of time in the briefing room, doesn't do a lot of anything lately. But he did go into the briefing room today, and he says the election will be free and fair, but he doesn't know how peaceful it's going to be. Listen to this.
The election is a month away. One, I'd like to know how you're feeling about how this election is going. And then also, do you have confidence that it will be a free and fair election and that it will be peaceful?
Two separate questions.
Very much.
I'm confident it'll be free and fair. I don't know whether it will be peaceful. The things that Trump has said and the things that he said last time out, when he didn't like the outcome of the election, were very dangerous. If you notice, I noticed that the vice presidential Republican candidate did not say he'd accept the outcome of the election. They haven't even accepted the outcome of the last election. So I'm concerned about what they're going to do.
So there is Joe El Baboso Biden with his sowing. I don't know. I mean, on one hand, you could say that he's just being honest. And on the other hand, you can say, well, he's the commander-in-chief. He's the president of the United States. If this is going to be a safe election, it's going to be because he makes the country safe, and he's going to, he's going to say the right thing so he doesn't sow or stoke fear into the American people. But that's what he's doing. And I try to have an open mind on these things, but I got to think, this guy's not doing a good job. I mean, no matter how I try, how nice I try to be, it just isn't going to work. That's not what a president says. That's what you say when you're really doing your best to influence people to be afraid, to really reinforce your story that Trump is some sort of threat to democracy. Now, with that being said, to try in the spirit of fairness, and I try to be fair, maybe, just maybe, he really believes some of the hype that's out there. Maybe Joe Biden really believes that Trump is a threat to democracy. Maybe the cops that were waving people in on January 6th into the Capitol building, maybe the prosecutors that overcharged people with, beyond parading, but with other crimes, maybe that propaganda is something that he believes as a truth. Now, it doesn't mean that any of us are condoning what happened on January 6th. I don't think this was a staged event. I think there were people there that did stupid things because temperatures were hot. I think we all saw that. Does that mean that they didn't have a lot of help from a lot of people, a lot of Ray Epps type people? I think they did. So, is it safe or fair to think that Joe El Baboso Biden has fallen victim to this? Maybe, if we're all naive. I'm going to say no. I think he's read in on all of this stuff. I think he knows what's going on. But for the sake of plausible deniability, maybe people in his administration, maybe people that were from the other team, maybe people that were not fans of Trump didn't coordinate, collude, and read in Joe Biden on this stuff. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe that's why he put on a MAGA hat the other day. I don't know. All I know is that when I hear things like that, I think, would Trump say that? Would he ever say that? I don't think he would. And I think that to me, that's the bottom line of what America needs. America needs the type of leader that is going to chart the course where things are going to be safe, where things are going to be prosperous, where things are going to be okay. Not a type of situation where we're going to, have to worry about, is this going to be a peaceful transfer of power? Or as he's saying, an election, he doesn't know if it's going to be safe. Who does that? Right? I mean, you have little kids. I think part of being president is kind of like being a parent in many ways. Not that you want the government to be your daddy, but it's a similar approach, right? You want to be honest, but you don't want to cause those under your care to be afraid, right? A little kid turns to you like, "Mommy, Daddy, am I going to be all right?" Of course you're going to be all right. You keep your eyes open. You'll be all right. You might fall down and scrape your knee, but you get back on that bike, right? It's about encouraging the people, I believe. I don't know. Maybe I'm off. Maybe I'm on a tangent that's not the right thread here. But I don't know. I hear this and I think, man, this is not where we need to be. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Joe El Baboso Biden, and we got a lot more coming up. We got a few interesting guests like we typically do, and a lot more to come. So keep it locked right here. I am Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And listen, amigos, check this out. I know a lot of our familia out there in the listening audience, you have big hearts, and we're all concerned about what's happening at the border. And when you look at the lawlessness at the border and you look at these 650,000 plus criminals, illegal aliens that have entered knowingly. They knew these people were criminals, and they've allowed them to come in, whether it was the 450,000 that are on the books, plus another 200,000 that are pending adjudication, a good number of them murders, another good number of them, I think some 13,000 of them convicted of sex crimes or rape. And this is a problem that we already face in this country in large degree, right? Why would we import more people that are going to exacerbate an ongoing problem? Well, I got a report from Luke Clary, ABC 10, Sacramento, California, where he's detailing how these two teenage girls were kidnapped and now, thank God, rescued by the sheriff's office. And more than 100 people were arrested in this child trafficking, sex trafficking sting that they pulled off in Sacramento County, California. Check this out.
This is what the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office calls Operation FAFO. Undercover officers taking on sex trafficking by posing as buyers and sellers at this North Sacramento hotel.
Put your hands behind your back, dude.
Sheriff spokesman Amar Gandhi says deputies made 122 arrests over 2 weekends.
If you're out here buying sex workers, we are going to get you. We may not get you the first time, we may not get you the second time, but we are going to get you.
The sheriff's office also rescued 2 16-year-old girls who will now get help from an organization like Weave, Inc. Beth Hassett is CEO.
Kids will be offered support and community resources. There are a lot of people available to rally around them and help them.
She believes most people grossly underestimate the scale of the problem in the Sacramento area.
I don't think people really understand what we're talking about and how many hundreds and thousands of people are involved.
Now, both the Sheriff's Office and Weave Inc. say that the focus remains on rescuing juveniles, deterring Johns, and offering resources to help individuals leave a life of prostitution.
There you have the report again from ABC News, Channel 10 in Sacramento. And this is a great thing, right? It's great to hear this Operation FAFO, which last I checked stands for Fool Around and Find Out. But we don't have enough of it, at least in my opinion. But I want to check in with somebody who knows exactly what's going on here, because Pastor Jaco Booyens, he's the head of Jaco Booyens Ministry, and he's been an anti-sex trafficking advocate for a long time. He's been on the show before, and he told us about how his sister was taken into a trafficking operation, and he hasn't turned back since. Jaco Booyens, welcome back, sir.
Rich, thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure. So let's talk a little bit about this, because I know that maybe let me ask the question this way. I feel like we've always had a problem with trafficking in our country. Back in the days, they called it runaways, and they said they were drug addicts and this and that. And really, it seemed like that was cover for the actual trafficking operation that was going on. And today, it seems like a lot of stuff has come to light, but we also have this disastrously open border where kids are coming in. A week ago, there was a story about these kids coming in, and people thought they were exhausted from the plight of coming across the Rio Grande River. And it turns out these people aren't their parents, and they were giving them gummies to knock them out, to like drug them so that they would look like they're tired when they got here. What is going on?
Rich, yeah, our next trip to the border is in a number of weeks, and it'll be our 30th trip to the border, where we do actual rescue operations, and we work with local law enforcement, and we help the local law enforcement. So I'm speaking to you of what I see with my own eyes, both sides of the border. These children, we find now in our own studies, 67% of the children that are brought across the border are sexually exploited before even arriving to the border, Rich. They're using sex crimes against the children to create a class of youth that will be literally ready to sell in the United States. This is diabolical. It's on the hands of the current administration, Rich. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's anarchy at the border. There's death at the border. And it's on the hands of the administration. You cannot be a nation without borders or without laws. And we have very clear laws against sex trafficking in this country, but the law and order is not prevailing.
You know, Jaco Booyens, I know that you are a minister and an advocate for, against sex trafficking. I feel like I don't want to paint you into a corner for opinion commentary. It's what I do. But you're an expert on this stuff. And I have to say, yeah, I look at the administration, like you just pointed out, and my thinking is that these people in Washington, whether it's Mayorkas, Biden, Harris, I look at them as transnational criminals that are facilitating this biggest, I'm going to say, underground slave trade and human smuggling operation that we've ever seen in our history. And I don't know if I'm being hyperbolic or overly emotional or if there's any truth to that, but it seems like that's exactly what we're looking at.
No, Rich, you're 100% correct, but let's defend your position with the law. If an individual that's not the president of the United States or the vice president or the border czar or the secretary of Homeland Security was to coerce a person from South America, defraud them by saying, you can come to America. We have a living here for you. We have a home for you. You can legally work in America, which is against the law. It's not lawful. You will not go through the Darien Gap and be sexually exploited. There's no harm in your way. If that is an individual that's not the vice president or the president, that individual would be called a sex trafficker. That individual would be called a co-conspirator, someone who is racketeering, someone who is operating under the guise of force, fraud, and coercion, which is the definition of sex trafficking. So by the definition, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, Kamala Harris, the border czar who's in charge of the border, and Secretary Mayorkas, they are involved in sex trafficking because they're facilitating traffickers and cartel. They're making a pathway for them to bring children into a very sophisticated cartel network inside the United States that are selling and trading children. They're aiding and abetting. They should be placed on a tribunal of crimes against humanity on an international court. And they should be tried for that.
Yeah, well, from your lips to God's ears, I don't know that that's going to happen because of the presidential qualified immunity and all these other things. But I hope and pray that we can get to Election Day sooner rather than later, because these people, in my opinion, have to be stopped. And how anyone could look at Kamala Harris and even consider her to continue this modern day slave trade that she's allowed to facilitate at the border as borders are is beyond me. Folks, we're on with Pastor Jaco Booyens. He's the head of Jaco Booyens Ministry, and you can go to their website at Jaco Booyens, Booyens ministries.org. And, of course, keep it right here because we're coming back with Jaco right after we take a quick pause. And, Jaco Booyens, let everybody know where they find you online, your social media handles.
Thank you, Rich. Jaco.Booyens, Jaco.Booyens, Booyens on Instagram and the same on X or Twitter. And we use these channels solely to bring awareness, educate families, and protect children.
Outstanding. We're going to continue the conversation with Pastor Booyens straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. It's me, Rich Valdez, and our guest, Pastor Jaco Booyens. Don't go anywhere.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
As a daughter of immigrant parents, I am ashamed of what the Biden and Harris administration has done to our country by opening our borders to all, including criminals who are wolves in sheep's clothing. Personally worked 3 cases within the city of Houston where little girls were targeted simply because they were young, beautiful, and vulnerable. and of course, underage. Predators have an appetite for children. Crossed the border, was given to a sponsor, and was only here 3 weeks before he decided to leave his sponsor's home, go to Pasadena, Texas from Louisiana, and he saw Maria. When Maria went to the door, that chain was not enough to keep this animal out of Maria's apartment. He pushed his way in, and Maria fought for her life. She was 11 years old. To all of you, 3 little girls passing away may not be many. But what if one of those little girls was your daughter? This case to me resonates because she's also a migrant child. And this says to me we're letting everything through the border because we're not checking them. And you're victimizing citizens, you're victimizing immigrants alike. We're not against immigration, we're against unvetted immigration. Mexico and Central America is where predators thrive. You think they come here to this country and it's the first time they do this? No. This country, it's further victimizing what these same immigrants got away from in their countries.
That is April Aguirre. She is a crime victims advocate talking about crimes against children by people that are coming across the border. Our discussion is surrounding trafficking similarly. And this problem is out of control, in my opinion. Pastor Jaco Booyens is with us. He's the head of Jaco Booyens Ministries, and he's an anti-sex trafficking advocate. And Jaco, when you hear this, these testimonies in Congress and other places, do you feel like we're getting any closer to resolving this or to developing or raising the type of awareness that's necessary to really combat this problem, or are we just spinning our wheels?
Rich, again, thanks for having me on the show. And the questions you ask us, they're the questions that should be asked in this hour. You know, why is it taking 2 years, almost 30 trips for us to the border before America is starting to wake up? No, enough is not being done yet because the American population do not quite understand how this process works. We have to say something that's difficult to swallow. But children are being brought into the United States, and they're being sold for sex. To who? The cartel is not selling the children to cartel.
Right.
They're selling the children as sex slaves to American men. We have buyers in our culture. We have American men that are willing to purchase sex from children. You just heard about a sheriff arresting 100 under, FOFA and FOFO. And so you're talking about a demand and a supply chain. And if there's a demand, someone will supply. And it's not just migrant children. As a matter of fact, the migrant children is in the minority of children being sold for sex in the United States. American-born children are sold every single day in the United States. So we have a cataclysmic moral dilemma in our country where we have fallen from morality. We've walked away from the Word of God. We've walked away from absolute truth. When you start making sex fluid and truth fluid, when you attack the womb, when you ask what is a woman and question whether a boy should play in girls' sports, when you say children can choose their gender, when you have gender-affirming care such as double mastectomies for 12-year-old children in the state of Texas, you're rendering a child defenseless against predatory figures. A child has no chance against an adult predator if an adult does not defend and protect that child.
Man, I don't think anybody could have said that any better. Folks, we're on with Pastor Jaco Booyens, and I don't know which one I want to follow up on first. I agree with you that if there were not an appetite for children being trafficked, they would sell something else, right? They'd be selling cocaine again, or they'd be selling whatever drug of choice it is. But it seems the biggest addiction we have right now, or at least it seems that way to me, is children. And I find it shocking, and I guess I find it shocking because I just don't see it, right? It's something you just don't see. I don't bump into my neighbor and get the suspicion that this guy is into trafficking children. But clearly, this is happening so much that it's got to be all around us, no?
100%. It's a $152 billion industry selling children predominantly and women for sex in the world, $52 billion. So a third of the world's consumption, a third of the world's consumption of sex with children is inside the 50 states of the United States. The 385,000 children that are lost under Kamala Harris's watch. And by the way, if I may say this, Rich,
please,
where is Vice President Harris now with equity and equality? These are brown, black, and Hispanic children that are lost. 385,000. They're not Caucasian children. Right. Have you heard the Vice President saying, I'm going to go find those children? We are going to go. No, she's not saying we're going to go find those children. They're forgotten because to them, human life does not matter. They have not shown me a single time where they actually would care for the life of a child. Their companions like Gavin Newsom just signed into effect State Bill 145, which creates a 10-year age gap. So if a 24-year-old sexually abuses a 14-year-old, the judge can decide in the court whether that guy is a predator and should be a sex offender or not. These are the laws they're making. They're making it easier for the predator to traffic the child. Of course, sex trafficking is going to flood into the United States. I just visited with Interpol that are telling me people are traveling from Nigeria to come purchase sex from children in the United States. We just caught a guy that flew from Germany, to come have sex with a 7-year-old.
So not New York, but the United States is now becoming known as the place to be for sexual tourism.
100% globally. Wow. It's internationally known. It's a mockery. They're laughing at us. We have the most drag shows for kids in the world per capita is Dallas, Texas.
Wow. Wow. Eye-opening.
The
I had
world
no
knows
idea.
this, Rich. This is an international networks of crime communicate. And when you get a call from Interpol, Vice Chairman of Interpol says, Jaco, are you guys aware that we have trafficking cells from Africa setting up shop on the southern border, moving into the U.S. because no one's stopping them? It is open season. We have international undercover operators that are telling us, hey, shore up. They're coming from everywhere because they know that children are available and the law does not defend the child. We're not seeing prosecutions of child sex crimes in this country, Rich. We have 254 counties in Texas. We only prosecute child sex crimes in 10 counties. We've got counties blocking the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton. They're blocking him from prosecuting sex crimes against children. We've got a massive problem in this country with a demand for sexual immorality and predominantly with children.
Who's paying for that? Who's paying to get these prosecutors that are going to, or lawyers that are stopping Paxton from bringing these cases?
An attorney general is not allowed to superimpose himself into a district attorney's case. So they're not allowing him to prosecute by saying, we're handling the cases, you're stepping out of your territory. But here's what they're doing, Rich. The district attorneys are George Soros, most of them. George Soros funded, like Clay Jenkins in Dallas. George Soros funded district attorneys and county judges, and they plead the cases down. In New York today, if you get arrested today, sex crimes against a minor, they get fingerprinted and released the same day, Rich. No bail.
Wow. So here we are most of the times railing against this stuff. I know I do. I rail against this all the time, the no cash bail and this immediate release, catch and release type of thing. But honestly, I didn't know, and I had not seen it publicized widely that included, sex crimes against children. I had no idea. That's disgusting.
Rich, if you go read the statute that was signed, this is under Cuomo, okay? And Hochul did not reverse this. This is so despicable.
That was in January of 2020, right? Is that what you're talking about? That bill? Yeah.
Yes, but
I knew they had approved attempted murder was allowed. It was a bunch of, but I didn't remember
and what else?
Seeing that.
Disabled children.
Oh, wow. Unbelievable.
The most vulnerable.
Who would put such a thing? Who would create such an exception?
A sick human being,
I'm not
Rich.
laughing. I'm just incredulous. It's shocking.
No, but it's sick. You either cry or laugh. I mean, what are you going to do? We got to fight.
Right. Wow. So, Jaco Booyens, stand by. I have to take a commercial. Bad timing, but I have to do it here. And we're going to come right back. I want to get your thoughts on how we even approach fixing this, because it's a lot more egregious than I thought it was. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're coming right back with Pastor Jaco Booyens.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation, and we're having a really interesting conversation here with Pastor Jaco Booyens. He's the head of Jaco Booyens Ministries. Make sure you check out their website, jacobouyensministries.org. And I know that so many of you are holding on the line and giving us a call at 8334-VALDEZ because you want to weigh in. I can't get to everybody that's on hold, but I'm going to grab the first caller that I see, and that's Pat in Sedona, Arizona, streaming us on KFNX out of Phoenix. Pat, go right ahead. You're on with Pastor Jaco Booyens.
Hey, thank you, Rich. Thank you very much. Minister, I really appreciate you bringing this to light. I've been down to the border myself. I live in Arizona, and I've gone down with fellow veterans about twice now, and I've seen very interesting things with children getting off the buses, with men, and the kids being put down, and then the kid disappears because the crowd goes crazy. You know, everybody's moving here and there, and I've always wondered what happened to these children. And you talking about the sex trafficking, I think we need to bring it to light. And what my question is to you, sir, the celebrities with Puffy Combs and Oprah Winfrey and this, do you think they have so much power they're trying to keep this down? Because you mentioned the laws changing in this country, the government not prosecuting child molestation laws and child trafficking.
Pat, I'm going to just jump in here. I think it's a good point. You're saying, do influential, powerful people get a pass, and are they somehow involved, like with Epstein and all that stuff? Jaco Booyens, what can you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. Influential people are involved. And yes, remember, entertainment moves culture. And so they're a mouthpiece. So they are the propaganda piece for an administration's will. But it's not just Hollywood. It's in the American culture, children are sold. Yes, absolutely. Epstein, Maxwell, Weinstein, Puffy, and there's many more coming. They are absolutely involved, and they are protected. Sean Combs was protected for 25 years until one victim was brave enough to take on the establishment. And we need to learn as Americans, take on the establishment. You have to speak up. Even if you're alone, you know, who can stand against you when God is for you? So great question, but it's wider than Hollywood.
It's Romans 8:31. Great verse. Thank you, Pat. Thanks for streaming us from KFNX, and great question. I appreciate it. You know, and Pastor, I agree with you that people have to stand up to the culture and to the establishment. And I think that's half of it. What's the other half? What are you advocating for when you're out there, when you're testifying before committees? What's the next step that we have to take?
There's a lot of policy and legislation. We touched 900 bills last year, Rich, across this country. But really, practically, here's the three-step approach. Number one, it's a bottom-up, top-down approach. We have to return law and order into the land. So if you ask me, we have to return Donald Trump to the White House because he's the only president to ever recognize from the White House that human trafficking exists in this country and opened an office to the White House that we worked with. Joe Biden closed that office. So point number one, if there's a single reason to vote him into the White House, vote him into the White House to stop the sexual exploitation of children. Secondly, fathers have to take their homes back. We have to, for me and my house, we serve the Lord. We have to think small. We got to protect our communities. We got to defend local, school board. Who's your children's friends? Who are their parents? Trust, do not trust and verify. Don't trust, proof and verify. Thirdly, American men are addicted to pornography. 55% of men in the American church are addicted to pornography. 67% of American men holistically watch pornography at least 3 times a week. Porn is the entry drug to purchasing someone for sex. We have to take a look in the mirror, Rich. We have to remove the log in our own eye and then go remove the splinter in the person we want to go attack. We've got to take ownership. It's our men that buy sex from children. That's a very difficult pill to swallow, but we have to restore those 3 things. Take your family back. Fathers have to be back in the house as the head of the household. We need leadership in this country from the top down that'll prosecute, that'll put bad guys away, that'll shore up the border, that'll put people who steal, plunder, rape, and abuse children, put them away for 50 years to life, and then let's get rid of our own contribution to the problem, meaning creating demand for sexual exploitation, such as pornography.
Wow. 3-step plan, well outlined, Pastor Jaco Booyens. There's so much I want to talk about with you. Do you have a couple of more minutes, or do you have to go right now?
No, it would be an honor, Rich. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Stick with me, folks. We're coming right back with Pastor Jaco Booyens.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Pastor Jaco Booyens is our guest. And Pastor, I wanted to keep you for a couple of extra minutes just because I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was in May of 2021, 2 MS-13 gang members were sentenced for murdering a 15-year-old girl in what they admitted in court was a satanic sacrifice. And prior to that, I didn't know that these guys were doing this as part of a sacrifice to Satan. It blew me away at the time. You know those things exist, but you didn't know that they were part of the gang life and the kidnapping and all of that. And I'm wondering if you know, being that you're an expert in this stuff, how much of that plays a part in what we're seeing today?
Quite a bit, Rich. When I told you earlier that the vice chairman of Interpol called me, the cartel, the gang that moved in for sex trafficking is an organ harvesting cartel.
Oh, my God.
And so through sex trafficking, particularly on migrant children, which the cartel calls ghost children and recycled children, because they know no one can look for them. There's no verification, no ID. There is a lot. Now, predominantly it's sex trafficking, but is organ harvesting and ritual sacrifice happening in our country? Yes. Mm-hmm. Last week, 200 witches and warlocks did a sacrifice in our country, and these are migrant children whose families in South America think and believe that their children are alive because they set their family member on a 3,000-mile journey for the land of milk and honey to be sold as a slave.
And here they are. Pastor, that pretty much gives me all the time I've got. But let me tell you, what a riveting conversation. I'm very grateful for you being here and telling us about this. I hope you'll come back really soon. Folks, check him out, JacoBouyensMinistries.org. Thank you, Pastor. God bless you.
God bless you, Rich.
All right, folks, we're coming right back. Hour number 2, straight ahead. More to come. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Friday evening. We're live and we're national. If you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, give us a call. Here's the number, 833-482-5337-8334, Valdez. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys on the topics we're discussing now, and of course on any topic you like in the third hour. That's at the top of the next hour coming up, 833-4-VALDEZ. But a couple of headlines as we continue our discussion tonight. We just wrapped up a riveting hour, in my opinion, on the epidemic of child sex trafficking. And something else that I want to get into is just some of the news that's out there that I feel is underreported, right? One of the things that Just the News, John Solomon's organization, is reporting tonight, Trump has gained 17 points with Hispanics over his 2020 numbers, and that's according to a poll from Univision, the Spanish language network. This key voting bloc has shifted 17% in favor of Trump since the last election. And in 2020, Trump secured 32% of the Hispanic vote compared to President Joe Biden's 65%. But the latest Televisa Univision survey shows Trump poised to take 39% of the Hispanic vote, while Vice President Kamala Harris, as I like to call her, would take 55%, meaning this key voting bloc has now shifted 17% in favor of Trump since the last election. Now, I'm not going to take any credit for that, right? I'm not trying to brag here, but I am saying, man, that's a huge shift for one particular demographic, and good for him. I'm glad that he was able to do that. Now, another area that's important that we need to make some gains on, I would say, as Americans, is in the debate over the Second Amendment, right? There's an attack on the Second Amendment, and there's people that support the Second Amendment. And even some of the people that support the Second Amendment, I feel, are sometimes misguided on some of the rhetoric that they hear because it's so, how do I say, ubiquitous, right? It's everywhere. They keep saying the same thing, so people just feel like, well, it's got to be true if everybody's saying it. But it's not. And Kamala Harris is a vehement opposer of the Second Amendment. She's been singing this song lately like she's somehow fair, or she had Tim Walz on the debate saying that she's a hunter. She's not hunted anything other than innocent people and Donald Trump, perhaps. But she's not a hunter. She might be a gun owner, but she's not a hunter. And she says that if somebody breaks into her house, they're getting shot. And she said that quite flippantly, and I believe there's a moment of honesty there. But she also had a lot more to say about the Second Amendment and gun control. Listen to this.
We have in our possession, we know how to stop these tragedies, and it is a false choice to suggest you are either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. I am in favor of the Second Amendment, and I believe we need to reinstate the assault weapons ban. And pass universal background checks, safe storage laws, and red flag laws.
So there she is. She wants these red flag laws. They try to make everything sound as if there's a dangerous storage law out there. I mean, it's just crazy to think that we entertain so much of this stuff, but it's out there and it's real. And I want to get to the bottom of it with somebody who knows a lot about what's going on. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. The website for that is crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org. Dr. John Lott, welcome back, sir.
Well, it's great to talk to you again. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. And, you know, I want to get into this AI chatbot stuff, but before we do, I want to get your reaction to what Vice President Harris said in that clip, because she seems to be kind of flip-flopping on the issue, but I think those who've observed her for any length of time, it's clear to us that she's not flip-flopping. She just is pretty much a gun-grabbing, anti-Second Amendment person. That's my thought. What say you?
No, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, you go back to the Heller decision in 2008. She put in a brief into the Supreme Court saying that government had the power to completely ban gun ownership. And everything that she's done since then just convinces me further of that fact. Biden has been the most anti-self-defense president that we've ever had. But Kamala Harris has effectively been his gun control czar. He set up this Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House, and he put her in charge of it. And so during the Biden administration, we've had literally thousands of gun dealers put out of business simply because of this so-called zero tolerance policy. You make one paperwork mistake, one typo, no matter how trivial, no matter how inconsequential, and they'll take away your license. There's a case recently that I was reading about where a firearms dealer in Texas 17 years ago had made a typo, had transposed two letters in a county name. The Obama administration, which was hardly sympathetic to gun owners, had looked at it, said that this was inconsequential, gave him a small fine, and closed the books. He's made no other typos in the next 17 years. So the Biden administration went back and reopened that case from 17 years ago and used it to go and take away his license to be able to go and sell guns. Those are the types of cases that they've been going after. But there's more
for a typo.
There's more. I mean, what happens if we applied that to government, agencies? That a government agency makes one typo, then we'll close down the agency? How many government agencies do you think would be there? And you don't have to go back 17 years to do that. But there's other stuff that they've done. Obama had this Operation Choke Point where they put pressure on financial institutions not to go and do business with industries or companies that they didn't approve of, like in the energy industry or firearms. Trump ended that, but Biden's put that back in place. I mean, try to run a business if you don't have some place that will handle the credit cards for your customers or handle checks. Are there workarounds that you can do? Yeah, but it's a lot more costly. Or look at the fact that they put together a national gun registry that, as of 2 years ago, had something like almost 1 billion transactions involving guns over many decades that they had computerized and put together. So, when she talks about these mass public shootings, I want to do something, but I want to do something that matters. She mentioned universal background checks. I wish these are background checks on the private transfers of guns. There's not one mass public shooting this century that would have been stopped if such a law had been in effect and had been perfectly enforced. I wish some reporter would go and say, okay, you bring this up after each shooting. Would it have stopped the most recent one? Would it have stopped any this century? But the reason why they push this has nothing to do with stopping mass public shootings. It just simply has to do with the fact that they want to have this national gun registry and know all the law-abiding people that own guns. But if you want to stop these attacks, one thing you have to do is to get rid of these gun-free zones. 94% of these mass public shootings take place where guns are banned. Anybody who's read the diaries or manifestos for these mass murderers knows that time after time they explain why they pick the targets that they do. The media, it drives me nuts. The media refuses to cover that part of their manifestos. You have the Nashville school shooter. She had looked at 3 other targets before she picked the school and turned them down because they were armed people at those other targets, and she was worried that they would stop them. You look at the Buffalo mass murderer the year before. He explicitly talks about wanting to go to a place where he knew his victims weren't armed. These guys want to go and get media coverage. and they want to commit suicide, but they want people to know who they are usually. And they know the more people they kill, the more media coverage that they're going to get. So they may be crazy in some sense, but they're not stupid. They know if they go to a place where their victims can't defend themselves, they're going to be able to go and kill more people.
Insane. And it seems like common knowledge, right, or common sense. If the easiest way to shoot fish in a barrel, why create that scenario? Yet we seem to be creating it time and time again in the name of safety. Folks, we're on with Dr. John Lott, and straight ahead, we're going to jump into a conversation on why AI chatbots are being programmed to spew the Democrats' gun control narratives. This is disappointing, but not surprising. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez coming right back with Dr. John Lott.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Dr. John Lott, and I know there's a few of you that are on the line that want to ask some questions. I want to grab at least one of these before we continue our conversation. Let's go to Johnny, Horseshoe Bend, Arkansas, KSAR. John, go right ahead with your question for Dr. John Lott.
I didn't have a question. I want to say something about the Second Amendment and how the people in the Democratic Party are always trying to take guns away. They're doing some. They're ridiculous. They're throwing stuff to the wall, and they're trying to see what sticks.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Let's continue with Dr. John Lott. And Dr. John Lott, is that something that you see in your day-to-day, that there are people trying to shut down gun shops or do whatever they can at every angle to stop people from purchasing guns?
Well, I think that's right. And the thing is, the people who get hurt the most from those policies are the most vulnerable people in our society. If my research convinces me of anything, there are two groups of people who benefit the most from owning guns, people who are the most likely victims of violent crime. And that tends to be poor minorities who live in high crime urban areas. The police are important, but the police themselves know that they virtually always arrive on the crime scene after the crime's occurred. And the question is, what's the safest course of action for someone to take when they're facing a criminal? And the second group of people who benefit the most are those who are relatively weaker physically, women and the elderly. You're almost always talking about a young man doing the attack. And when a man is attacking a woman or an elderly person, there's a lot larger strength difference that exists there on average than when a man is attacking another man. And the presence of a gun represents a much bigger relative change in those people's ability to go and protect themselves. And so the types of rules that they have that make it costly for people to be able to go and get guns, these background checks on private transfers. In D.C., it costs $125 to go and do a background check on a private transfer of a gun. And all these states that have these, virtually all of them, have a rule that you do a background check on each gun. So let's say you and I lived in D.C. or California or Colorado, and I'm going to give you 4 guns. Well, it's not just one person giving one other person the 4 guns. You'd think it'd just be one background check, but they require a separate background check on each gun. So in D.C., that's $500. Try to give me a rational explanation for why they would set that up if they're not just trying to make it costly, particularly difficult for poor people to be able to go and have guns for self-defense.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. That's I've seen that happen where I live in New Jersey. I've seen the same thing. They either make it cost prohibitive or they make you get a lawyer in order to actually, get you to the bottom of what's going on with your application. I want to switch gears before we run out of time. We have about 2.5, 3 minutes to go. And I want to talk about this AI chatbots situation where you've got these chatbots that are programmed to talk about Democrat gun control narratives. Tell us more.
Right. Well, I mean, people use like Google News Search and whatever. They have an idea that the types of articles that come up at the top are going to be from the New York Times and Washington Post. So you get a certain bias that's there. The same bias affects these chatbots. So we have done a survey in March, and then we did it again in August, where we looked at 15 chatbots, and we asked them 9 questions about crime, like, do you think higher arrest rates and conviction rates deter crime? Do you think voter IDs deter crime? Do you think police are important in deterring crime? Questions like that. Do you think the death penalty deters murder? And what you find is that all of the chatbots are liberal. So like they all think that voter IDs will have nothing to do with reducing vote fraud. They all think that things like higher arrest rates and conviction rates don't deter crime. About half of them think that they strongly believe that it has nothing to do with deterring crime. With regard to gun control, we asked 7 questions, things like, do you think concealed carry reduces crime? Do you think, a whole range of different types of gun controls, like the ones you had quoted from Kamala Harris? Mm-hmm. And there's only one that was conservative on that, and that was Elon Musk's Grok in fun mode. All the other ones were very liberal in terms of that. And the thing is, that liberal bias has gotten even stronger as we've gotten closer to the election.
Is there an end in sight, or is it just raising awareness and keeping the American public on their P's and Q's and aware that this is what they're up against?
I think the only thing to do is just make people aware, and hopefully they'll pick ones that are less biased than others. But, people are going to use this to help them decide how to vote. You have reporters that I've talked to that have used it to help them do research. You have students that go and have the chatbots help them write term papers. And so, you see this bias is going to affect people's views in a lot of different areas. It's going to, I'm sure things like the biases in Google News Search had some effect on elections because, just take Robert F. Kennedy when he was running in the Democratic primary. If you tried to do a Google News search on the candidates who were running in the on the Democratic side, his name wouldn't even come up. It's one way. So, they can put their thumb on the scale and affect initiatives that are on the ballot. Who knows what percentage impact they have on the races. But surely one can imagine that there are lots of close races that things like Google News Search has skewed.
Really well put, Dr. John Lott. Let everybody know how they find you and how they follow you on social media.
Well, thanks. Our website is crimeresearch.org. My Twitter handle is my name, John R. Lott Jr. But I appreciate you having me on. And our website is crimeresearch.org.
Folks, check them out at crimeresearch.org. Dr. John Lott, I want to thank you for being here, sir. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you.
Well, thank you for being there.
You bet. And folks, we continue our conversation straight ahead. What's going on with those investigations into the attempted assassination of former President Trump? We're going to find out about that as he goes back to Butler, the scene of the crime. Mañana he'll be there. We'll talk about it tonight. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. It's me, Rich Valdez.
America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Familia, I want to continue our conversation. Of course, it's me, Rich Valdez, with you live until 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Most listened to radio talk show in syndication in this time slot. Grateful for that opportunity. And I want to ask a question. And the question I'm going to ask is, whatever happened to all of those investigations into what happened with the assassination attempt on President Trump. Congress is looking into it. The Secret Service said they're looking into it. The FBI said they're looking into it. I don't know what's happening with that, but I do know one thing, that El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, is returning to the scene of the crime. Listen to this.
Trump is eager to return to Butler, Pennsylvania. To put it simply, he's been saying for months now that he's been wanting to return. He's even joked about how he's going to start his speech tomorrow by saying, quote, as I was saying. Our Allie Bradley actually spoke with Trump exclusively about how he's feeling about this return. Let's take a listen.
Well, I'm always worried. I think that the White House isn't treating us very good. I get crowds that are 10 times bigger than anybody else, 20 times bigger than anybody else, and we're entitled to security. And I have a lot of respect for Secret Service. I think they're doing a good job, but they're only allowed to do what the White House is letting them do.
Now, the former president has really ramped up that criticism of the Biden administration, not allowing more United States Secret Service agents around Trump. And he really ramped up that criticism again after that second assassination attempt on his life in Florida. And we're expecting to hear more of that tomorrow.
That's Libby Dean with Fox News with the report. And again, what's going on with those investigations? Well, one of those investigations is being conducted by William Trachman. He's the general counsel for Mountain States Legal Foundation. He's former deputy assistant secretary for civil rights in the Department of Education during the Trump administration. And he's with us now. William Trachman, welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me. Greetings from Colorado.
All right. And what's going on here? I mean, it seems like this is a huge deal. They shot this man in the head. He dodged a bullet. It hit his ear. And nobody knows anything other than the media wanting to say that there's a couple of lone wolf shooters out there and, good luck.
Well, you said it. What's going on here, right? I mean, that is the question of the day. We've had the Senate investigation, and we're hearing reports of other internal investigations, but I haven't heard of anyone being fired. I haven't heard of anyone saying the conditions that existed in Butler could never happen again. I've never heard anyone say, we're no longer scared of sloped roofs. And so we'll do a better job when President Trump is back in Butler. Now, we, Mountain States Legal Foundation, thinks that DEI has something to do with it. We saw some agents unable to holster their weapons. We saw one agent ducking behind President Trump, which is kind of the epitome of doing a bad job as a Secret Service agent. Mm-hmm. And Kim Cheadle is on the record saying, look, I really care about gender when it comes to my Secret Service agents. I want Secret Service agents to be 30% female. And we have nothing against female Secret Service agents. We're all for equality. We're worried that they're putting sex and gender ahead of qualifications, and that might be being borne out by these incidents. And the fact that we're talking, I think, after the third, but possibly not last attempt on President Trump's life should give us concern. Why isn't there some report out there saying we fixed all the problems, we know what we did wrong, and we'll never do it again? I just don't understand, as you said, what's going on.
Folks, we're on with William Trachman. He's a general counsel for Mountain States Legal Foundation, and he served in the Trump administration as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights in the Department of Education. And I guess I'm baffled, right? It's difficult for me to think that, I guess it's not really baffling, right? But I guess it's very disappointing to know that something like this happened, whether it was Biden or anybody else, honestly. I think we should at least feel like the government is doing something to look into this. And it almost feels like they're not doing something, even if they are, right? It seems like they're being nonchalant with it. From a political perspective, to me, it seems like this is just a bad look that, honestly, again, politically speaking, I think bodes well for Trump, because people are looking at this and saying, you know what, it looks like the deck is stacked against him. People that don't even like Trump, people I know that don't like Trump, are telling me that they're out to get this guy. I might even vote for him because it's like a sympathy vote.
Yeah, especially when he's, rising from the ground saying fight, fight, fight. That has the added benefit of being inspirational and shows grit and courage. So I definitely understand that perspective. I mean, I would think that Democrats also don't like being assassinated either. And so they would want equal ability of the Secret Service to protect them. And to their credit, I think Congressman Ro Khanna out in California, my original home state, really took it to Kim Cheadle and said, you ought to resign. And after Reagan was shot in the 80s, the Secret Service director resigned, and Kim Cheadle didn't know that. And so the next day she did, because I think there was political consensus across the aisles that this was not the right person, having come, I think, from Pepsi to run the Secret Service. What's weird is that there's an asymmetry, though, because you have the First Lady getting what looks like better treatment than the leading presidential candidate. And I just don't understand why that would be. So I'm worried that that asymmetry is going to continue. Obviously, it's very dangerous for anyone if who gets the most security depends on who's sitting in the White House. That's not what you want. You want equality. You want symmetry between the political parties in order to make it so that it's a fair and equal system where the people are protecting the president. So I really do hope that we get to a point where there's no political disagreement about the need to have the best and the brightest in the Secret Service.
Yeah, amen to that. And William Trachman, stick with me. I want to ask you about the bill that was passed about a week ago, where the Senate and the House both agreed that they should increase Secret Service funding and allow both candidates of major parties to have that type of security that Biden gets. I'm curious to know if you think it's actually happening and what the implementation is going to look like. Stick with us. William Trachman is our guest, general counsel for Mountain States Legal Foundation and former Trump administration official, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Brown. He's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The American people are relieved that President Trump is safe following the unbelievable second assassination attempt in a period of weeks on his life. We as House Republicans extend our gratitude to the hardworking law enforcement officers who are working to keep President Trump, his family, and his team safe. However, we have to ask ourselves how this was possibly allowed to happen, not once, but twice. How were there two assassination attempts on President Trump in as many months? How were these armed and dangerous individuals allowed to get so close to the former president and current Republican presidential nominee and likely next president of the United States? And I want to point out, Democrats' violent statements have fueled this, like a very junior freshman member of the New York delegation who said about President Trump, he should be eliminated. It is uncalled for. You should call the Democrats out in the media for fueling this violence against President Trump. There must be a clear explanation of what happened this weekend in Florida, as well as answers for what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and changes must be made to ensure this does not happen again. That's why we're so proud that the Speaker set up that committee and broadened it from not only the investigation into Butler, Pennsylvania, but also what happened this weekend in Florida as well.
And that is Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik, Congresswoman from New York, sharing her sentiment here. And it's something I agree with, that we're all grateful that Trump's okay after that second assassination attempt. But he's headed back to Butler tomorrow for, I guess, part two, right, to finish the speech. And questions still remain. The Senate bill that was passed along with the House over equal protection with Secret Service for major party candidates seems to have passed unanimously. However, I haven't heard much about its implementation. I don't know what's going on, and is Trump going to have more when he's on the ground tomorrow in Butler, Pennsylvania? I don't know if William Trachman has a handle on this stuff, but I'm curious to find out his thoughts. William Trachman, welcome back, General Counsel for Mountain States Legal Foundation. And tell me, what do you think? Do you think this bill was a good thing? Do you think it was smoke and mirrors? Was it a political lip service? Or do you think Trump's really going to get what he needs moving forward?
Well, it's somewhere between a Band-Aid and a good thing. This is a bill that passed unanimously, which is,
Rare.
unusual this day and age, and President Biden just signed it earlier this week. So it does devote quite a bit more funding to the Secret Service. But my question is this a money problem? We suspect that there's DEI going on, both in hiring and promotion and training standards. So throwing money at that kind of problem doesn't actually fix anything. If there's an accountability problem coming from the top, if there's some other management style that's not working within the Secret Service, then passing a bill that adds dollars to the Secret Service does not actually fix anything. And if those dollars are misused or spent on more DEI programming, they're not going to fix what presumably is the problem, which is a lack of enough agents to fill in the gaps. And so you have to rely on local police forces or other folks who are not technically Secret Service agents to provide the detail. Look, I can't imagine it being a negative. I just don't know that it's going to be a major positive in terms of presidential security. But at least it demonstrates what I was talking about before, which is that in the abstract, there's bipartisan agreement. Nobody wants to be assassinated, right? So there is at least a symmetry there in terms of the optics. So I suppose chalk one up for bipartisanship in this context.
Yeah, that's so funny, and the context in which you expressed it was just classic and so accurate, right? One would hope that the Democrats don't like getting assassinated either. William Trachman, let everybody know how they find you and what you're up to at the Mountain States Legal Foundation.
Yeah, so Mountain States Legal Foundation was founded in the late 1970s. We do 4 types of litigation. One is natural resources. The other is equal protection and anti-DEI work, like we've been talking about. We also do First Amendment free speech work, and then we also do Second Amendment gun work. We've been around for 4.5 decades. We're all pro bono, so when people approach us with clients, as clients, we don't charge them by the hour. And we like to say that we're the Constitution's lawyers. So we go to court, we do impact litigation, which means we bring cases to vindicate the Constitution and limited government in order to achieve victory in the courts. And for the time being in Colorado, that's definitely one of the few places where you can actually make progress because our state has gone the other direction. But there are ways to get a hold of us at mslegal.org. You can become a supporter, a contributor. You can get on our email list, but you can also submit case ideas. We have a button there that says, if you've got a good idea for a case, or if you are a case, if you want to be a plaintiff or a litigant, and again, we're pro bono, you can submit your case idea or your facts if you want us to represent you.
Outstanding. Well, William Trachman, the Constitution's lawyer, I love that. Folks, make sure you check him out. Follow him online at MS Legal. And the idea that you guys are out there defending the Constitution is great, right? I think we need more people doing that. I feel like we've gone so far away from all of that, from what the Constitution says we are and should be, from the founders' original intent and all of that. It just seems to be like it's a taboo topic nowadays, where we're just told, no, we don't do that anymore, and we need to get back to basics. So thank you.
Yeah.
For that.
Absolutely. I've heard people say, the Constitution's a roadblock to enacting a socialist agenda, or, the First Amendment's a roadblock to, stopping online misinformation. We are a big roadblock. You're exactly
Thank
right.
God.
So let's keep up the good work, right, for the Constitution.
Oh, man. You hear all the good ones. All right. William Trachman, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Let's have you back on again soon. I really appreciate the conversation. Godspeed.
Thanks so much, Rich. Thanks.
You bet. And amigos, we continue. Your calls and more coming up, plus a couple of tidbits I want to get to right before we go into open phones across America. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
What does the states in the storm zone need, Mr. President?
Okay.
What do the states in the storm zone, what do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what storm you're talking about. They're getting everything they need. And they're very happy across the board. So we just got to keep, I'm going to have to go back to the Congress and get some more money for it.
They're getting everything they need, but Alejandro Mayorkas says FEMA's got no more money because we spent it all on illegal aliens at the border. Unbelievable. Anyway, let us continue. I want to go to Lance in Kalispell, Montana, KOFI. Lance, go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. Thank you. You know, Christ teaches us that there is no greater love than to lay down our lives for another. So to each and everyone in the storm's path that has stepped up to help their neighbor and their community, God bless you. You are the true heroes, not the government. This is what makes America great. Since our founding, it's been the individuals coming together as a community, the community coming together as a state or a commonwealth for the greater good of this nation. It's not about race, religion, pronouns, etc. It's about being human and showing each other love and compassion, rising up in the face of adversity and coming together as a unified nation. God bless the USA.
Outstanding, Lance. Outstanding. Couldn't have said it any better myself. I really appreciate your thoughts. This is definitely true, and you're right. This is what it really all boils down to. And you know, as I'm preparing for the show, I watch a few different news programs, and I saw some video of it looked like a family or at least a neighborhood sitting in their living room, or maybe standing, because there was about 4.5 feet of water, maybe closer to 5 feet. And there were, I don't know, half a dozen people in this room, and they weren't freaking out, but they were literally standing in 4.5 feet of water. Brown, dark, muddy water. And I just thought to myself, I've never done that. Thank God I've never done that. I've never had to be in a room that had 4.5 feet of water in it, you know, coming up to my neck, or whatever it's going up to on these people. And that's got to be scary. You know, when Hurricane Sandy hit New Jersey and New York, people had, I don't know, 2.5 feet of water in their basements, you know, up to your knee, maybe up to your thigh. That was the most water I'd ever seen in my life from a hurricane. And that was a lot. But that wasn't my living room, and it wasn't, you know, up to my neck. And these people were sitting there, and they seemed so calm, like, you know, just waiting to get rescued or waiting for whatever they were waiting for. I mean, they had nowhere to go. They'd probably lost everything. And what you're saying is just so spot on. We've just got to continue helping one another for the sake of just doing the right thing and being good Americans. Lance, thank you for your really great words. Lance in Kalispell, Montana. Shout out to KOFI. And now's the time. Get your calls in. It's open. Phones across America. I'm with you live until 1 a.m. Eastern time. Then we're taking a break for the weekend. I'll be back on Monday. Make sure you check out the website, richvaldez.com, if you want to listen to any of the interviews that you may have missed. Catch up. You can listen to any show anytime, and you could download them, and you could stream them, and you could share them with anybody you want to share them with. So make sure you check it out again, richvaldez.com. And folks, it's open. Phones across America, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this evening. And our telephone number is 833-482-5337, 8334-VALDEZ. You get to chime in. We call this our third hour of the show, Open Phones Across America. That's not a name I gave it. That is a name that the former host of the program, Larry King, gave it, and this tradition was maintained by the late, great Jim Bohannon, who had his own cool phone number. 86650-JIMBO was his number, and he held that tradition for 3 decades, and who would you or me, right? Who would any of us be to prevent that tradition from continuing? So Open Phones Across America is the third hour of the program, and we're going to talk about just about everything else that you've got, and some offbeat stories and stuff like that. You know, just we're going to have a good old time here. It's Friday. We're going to let our hair down, if you will. Now, El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, he's always in the headlines. So, yeah, he's my favorite for 2024. But he's also just really a newsmaker, right? He's probably one of the biggest newsmakers out there. He was in Fayetteville, North Carolina earlier tonight, and he shared his words, and he didn't mince any of those words, on the Biden and Harris administration's response to the hurricane. Check this out.
The other story they don't talk about is what a rotten job they're doing in North Carolina and other places with respect to the hurricane. They are doing a terrible job.
They are doing a terrible job, is right. And you know what's funny here is I think everybody can see it. Now I realize it's a natural disaster and it's severe and I get it. But one would think that they could even, at least from the public relations perspective, right, from the comms perspective, when you talk about these things, I don't think you should say the things that Biden's saying, like, oh, no, we've given them everything we're going to give them. I mean, really, he's a retail politician. Why wouldn't he say whatever they need? We're going to have a whole of government approach here. Like, why wouldn't he say something like that? But, this is what he said. Anyway, a lot of people are criticizing Alejandro Mayorkas, the henchman, right, if you will, right? This is the Che Guevara to these two. He's saying that there's not enough money for Americans, right? You have Texas Governor Abbott, who's amongst many that are out there demanding that the Biden-Harris administration put Americans first. And you've got this hurricane that's killed hundreds of Americans across 6 states. You've got entire neighborhoods that are wiped out. People are hungry, homeless, in the dark, in flooded homes. And these guys, instead of offering a word of consolation, a word of encouragement, like I talked about in the first hour, they don't say, things are going to get better. They're talking about, this is what we got. And I just think it's inappropriate, especially at a time where we are funding Ukraine to, obscene. Listen, I'm all about Ukraine. I really am. A lot of people take exception because I want to see them protect their territory. I don't care if that territory, some people say it was stolen from Russia. I'm going to say this. I don't care. I want to see them do well. I want to see them be okay. I want to see them be sovereign. But I don't want to see them get hundreds of billions of dollars in aid or even in equipment while Americans are in the dark in 4.5 feet of water, cold, homeless, hungry after a hurricane. We have to be smarter. We have to be better. That's the bottom line. Help is needed. There's a lot of trouble. And we've got this guy, Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, saying that, there's not enough money to go around. And he said, quote, this was on Wednesday, "We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds." Come on. That's unacceptable. It really is. Anyway, thank God for the good old American people and for charitable organizations and people sticking together and doing the right thing, like one of our callers mentioned in the last hour. And I want to get your thoughts on this because we've talked about a lot tonight. We talked about child sex trafficking, how that's becoming normalized and in some places codified, right? It's legalized, if you will, in some obscene way that this is what's going on. We've talked about the, I'm going to say, so-called investigation into the assassination of former President Trump, who's back in Butler tomorrow. And good for him. God bless him. I hope he's all right when he gets to Butler, and I'm sure he will be. And we had a talk about the duplicitous nature of Democrats when it comes to gun control. So lots to discuss, plus whatever you guys want to bring to the table. Let's go to Sparks, Nevada, KFOY, and check in with Aaron. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Thank you. I remember going through the 94 earthquake in California. I also remember them saying that if it happened again, because of Katrina, the hurricane, that California would be screwed for funding.
Yeah, well, listen, I think you're right, Aaron. And I'm glad that you survived this 1994 earthquake in California and everything was okay. But the reality is, but for those charitable people like you're talking about, and the people that are always willing to help, we wouldn't, we can't rely on the government all the time. That's not the intent of our nation, right? Our nation has a very specific call. And some nations out in Europe and other places, the government has completely replaced the church and the role of society, right? Where governments now run, there are no private orphanages. The church has no orphanage. There's just the government that takes children in. And in my opinion, this is a big mistake. We don't want to make the government the number one organization or aid agency in our country. But this is what happens when people that are obsessed with big government get into power. That's what we start to see. Aaron, thank you for your call. Shout out to Nevada, KFOY, excuse me. The dyslexia is kicking in. And on that note, I want to go to Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA, and check in with Robert, our resident expert on Dresden, Germany. Robert, go right ahead.
Hey, you've got my number, all right, I must say. Okay, Rich, I just wanted to suggest that when our government could probably save a lot of money and understand how things would work if they just compared our country with how Germany works. But they have to have intimate knowledge of Germany. But 60% of Americans are of German descent and have a lot of German characteristics. At least they did. Particularly
what are German characteristics?
1960s. Excuse me?
What are German characteristics?
Well, exactness and cooperation and taking things personally. In other words, if something happens, Germans take it personally. I mean, they'll personally get involved and find out what is going on here, and we've got to have this correct. Germans pay a lot of money for public service, and they're ready, willing, and able to do that.
Right, yeah, and you're right. A lot of Europeans, Robert, actually pay a lot of tax. So it's not uncommon for people in Europe to pay close to 60% of their income in taxes in exchange for these, the socialism that they have. And they expect to have education that's covered and healthcare that's covered and all these different things. It's basically like you're in a partnership or a marriage or a some sort of arrangement with the government, right? The government becomes a partner at taking more than half of your money and giving you those things that you need. This is something I personally don't believe in because I don't believe government, at least our government in the United States, has never, ever proven itself to be worthy of being able to administer any of these things. And I would just look back to every experience I've had at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Some of them have been decent in recent years, but forever, that was a nightmare. And even paying a parking ticket. A little while ago, my ex-girlfriend and I are still very good friends, and she was over tonight, and she was like, "Oh, I got to pay a parking ticket." And she tried 3 times and couldn't figure it out. And I made fun of her, and I was like, "Oh, come on, it's your fingernails getting in the way because they're a little longer and whatever." So I took it, and I tried to show off and pay. No, I couldn't do it either. Why? Because the stupid website didn't work. All right, it's called njmcdirect.com. It's a New Jersey Municipal Court Direct. So not only did she get a ticket for parking head first into a diagonal parking space, it was required. There was a sign, but I guess she didn't see it, that said you have to back into the spot at the park, right? So she's there. Her daughter's 7 years old. She's there at a play date with some other moms from the school. They go to a Catholic school, and there's a few little kids there. They're all 7 or 8 years old. And she gets a $55 ticket for parking facing the wrong direction, not on the street, right? In a diagonal parking space, which, again, I know people who back into those things all the time. I typically don't. I don't mind backing out of a spot, but some people like to be ready to go when they leave. But my point is, it's not commonplace in any of the areas where we live here where you would do that. And the ticket seemed pretty high. But my point was, even you get the ticket and you try to give the government their $55 for your, let's say, 1 hour worth of parking there with, head first instead of being backed into the spot. And they wouldn't even take it because their website wasn't working. Bad enough that you're paying as much to park at a public park in Bergen County, New Jersey, as much as you would pay for an hour-long parking in New York City. Isn't that obscene? $55. And then the website doesn't work. And that's my issue oftentimes with why I think government is just not good at doing a lot, right? And this is, if they were good at things, if we could say, you know what, they're great. I'll show you a good example of a company. I don't know, let's just say right now in social media, I think the prime example we'd probably have right now is Twitter, now known as X. I think Musk has done a good job turning this company around and trying to get it to become profitable. It's never been profitable. So trying to get it to a place where it's profitable, trying to get it to a place where it really is a digital town square where people can go and say bad things about other people, and they're free to say it. It's a real free speech platform. But this has taken some time. The government would never allow that. They would never, if the government were in charge of Twitter, and similarly, I would say it likely has been the last several years, we know what that is. It's a one-sided thing, and it's never really well done on the administration side. So anyway, Robert, thanks for your call, brother. I appreciate it. Good to hear from you. I hope everything's good in South Carolina where you are. Shout out to everybody on WTMA. And there is way more to come. We're going to continue our conversation with you all in Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois, Arkansas, Montana, Idaho again. And I'm looking for, I think we have a call from New York coming in and one from California. So we've got a lot to discuss and a lot of people to discuss it with. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation. Let's see, where was I going with this? I want to go, I forget. I had a specific state in mind. Let us go to Otis in Morgantown, Kentucky, WKCT. Go right ahead, Otis.
Good evening, Rich. Thank you for taking my call. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Tell the call screener, I'd heard that Dolly Parton had gave $1 million for the relief effort over there. And, it tells me right, this early and everything, her doing that, she knows that it's going to be some hard times over there. Sure appreciate people like her and everybody's pitching in and all. And I know I was telling this call screener, heard today we're giving the Taliban $1.1 billion this year. It's just astronomical. Them people, our people need it.
Oh, yeah. Listen, as we look at Trump earlier made a comment at the rally he was at tonight in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He made this comment that they're doing a disastrous job with the hurricane relief. That wouldn't be as believable if we didn't have Afghanistan as an example. The fact that they had this withdrawal from Afghanistan, and they try to blame Trump for all of that too, saying it was his idea to withdraw, they just pulled the trigger. But, I mean, clearly, that's like saying, look, I was pulling my car out of the parking spot, but if you don't know how to drive the car and you're going to bang up the car behind you, parallel parking, hit the curb on the way out, you can't blame me because I parked the car there and, you don't know how to take it out of the spot. And that's ultimately what happened here, right? Trump had conditions in mind, a conditions-based withdrawal, and they didn't. They just said, hey, we're going to do this and we're blaming Trump. And that's bad policy. So, yeah, I think you're right. Good on Dolly Parton for doing the right thing. God bless her. And really kudos to all of our fellow Americans that are really just, they're toughing it out. They're grinding it out in the face of losing family members, friends, and neighbors. More than 200 people are dead because of this. This is a big deal. And I don't want to discount it in any way. I want to make sure that, those that are listening, if they have a transistor radio and they're able to listen, even though they may not have power, we're all rooting for you. We're all praying for you. We're all Americans, and we want to see you do really, really well. Otis in Morgantown, Kentucky. Excuse me. Big shout out to you guys on WKCT. I appreciate it, Otis.
Are you still there?
I am.
Okay, Kamala Harris was looking out the window the other morning, saw a little boy out there with a basket at the gate and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he must be wanting to give me something. So she goes out there and says, hey, little boy, what you got in the basket? He pulls the towel back. She says, I got 6 Democrat puppies here. She says, ain't that cute? She goes around everything. A couple of days later, she looks out the window, sees the same little boy. Her husband Doug's there then. She said, Doug, you got to see this. This is the thing you ever seen. She said, come with me. He said, ask that little boy what's in his basket there. He'll make your day. So he went over and asked the little boy, what you got in your basket? He pulled the towel back and said, I got 6 Republican puppies here. Camilla run around and said, well, wait a minute, little boy. You said a couple of days ago you had 6 Democrat puppies there. He said, yeah, I did, but they got their eyes open now.
I remember that. That's actually an old Reagan joke.
Everything are born with their eyes closed.
Yep. That's a great joke, Otis. Thank you for the call, brother. Godspeed to you. And shout out to everybody on WKCT in Kentucky. That was good. A much-needed laugh. And, folks, we continue. We continue on this Friday night. We're live. We're national. 833-4-VALDEZ. Calls from South Carolina, Ohio, Illinois, Arkansas, Montana, and Idaho coming up next. New York and California. Where you at? All right. Rich Valdez coming right back.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Those Republicans out there who are sitting on the fence, just do it this one time. Do it this one time. Vote for the Democrat to save the country. Listen to Liz Cheney. When everything goes back to normal, then become a Republican again, like Alyssa will become, and probably
Kamala said the day of a robust two-party system will come back.
Well, but listen, the thing is this. We can have policy differences. You can have policy differences with Kamala. You can have policy differences with Liz Cheney. We are not at a point right now to be talking about policy differences. This is not about economic difference because we are not running against a normal human being. Right. We are running against Donald Trump, who is an existential threat to humanity and democracy.
I do want to say, I am still a Republican, and I don't believe it's my job to tell people how to vote, but to give them the facts. And I have facts, having worked closely with them, that they just may not know. I feel that's my duty to the country. So I think, and allow the chips to fall where they may. People will decide how they vote, but that's what I'm going to do.
That is Anna Navarro on The View today saying policies don't matter. You got to vote for Kamala Harris, que mala eres, which means how bad she is in Spanish, because she's not Trump. I want to get your thoughts on that and everything else we've been talking about tonight, from child sex trafficking to Trump revisiting Butler, Pennsylvania, where he was shot in the ear, to everything else we've chatted about tonight, gun control amongst them. And let's go back to the phones, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to go to, stand by, I'll tell you right now. We're going to go to Larry, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN. Go right ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Rich. I'm just going to get to the point. You know, the politicians and celebrities, they got to show a little respect in class when they're on a platform, you know. There's like a difference of freedom of speech and, you know, threaten talk, you know. You got to act the same, blowing up the White House. You know, when's the last time an actor assassinated a president? You know, you got the bullseye thing. You got to take them out, eliminating. And, you know, the Secret Service should have a little sit down with some of these people, depending on, you know, their lingo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, listen, I know exactly what you're talking about. We've played those clips on this show. And you've got Rick Wilson, the head of the Lincoln Project, an anti-Trump Republican, saying, look, they're going to have to eventually put a bullet in this guy's head. You got Sean Penn saying, hey, when was the last time an actor assassinated a president? You've got Madonna saying, I think it's time we blow up the MFing White House. Right? I mean, just it's crazy stuff. You've got a lot of people saying a lot of incendiary things. And I agree with you, right? The idea of that they make this comparison that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater is because it goes beyond the expectation of what free speech is. And something else that goes beyond the expectation of free speech is what they call fighting words, right? And this is the fighting words doctrine that was part of, I forget which case that challenged free speech. But the fighting words doctrine were language that was, you know, incendiary to the level of somebody believing that they were going to have to defend themselves physically, right? And that they were somehow going to be harmed. And that this is not, right? You can't say to your wife, I am going to smack the crap out of you. And nah, come on, it's free speech, officer. It doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way in the least. So, yeah, you're right. We do have to, you know the law and follow the law. I agree with that 100%. And these women on The View, I think they push the limits. And because they're, like you said, because they're popular or in Hollywood or, you know, well-known, I think they seem to get a pass, but we can't allow that type of thing to go on. Those double standards have to end. Thank you for your call. Larry in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN. Shout out to you guys. And let's continue. I want to go to Paul, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Paul, what are your thoughts on Alejandro Mayorkas and his treasonous lack of regard for the people and FEMA?
Yeah, well, first of all, I remember that joke, the Ronald Reagan joke there, when I was getting out of high school, and I'm 6 years old, so that tells you how long that joke's been around.
And it's still funny.
Yeah. And now with Mayorkas, you know, here it is. The way that our government spends our tax money is reckless. You know, with all these pork barrel projects and everything that they do, you know, and all the money they give these foreign countries. Now that, you know what hits the fan in our country, Mayorkas has the gall to say, well, we don't have the money, you know. So where's my money going? And I think it's Republicans and Democrats alike that, you know, recklessly spend our tax dollars. We can't balance our budget. That's half of what's wrong with our country, inflation and so forth. And that just slapped me as, you know, well, there you go, stupid. You know, that's what happens when you spend the tax money like they're spending our tax money. Like, you know, and they print money and they print money. You know, that is going to destroy the United States, in my opinion, Rich. And I'd just like to know your opinion.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Listen, I'm with you. I think a lack of virtue in our elected officials is really what's going to destroy our country. And really, it's that same lack of virtue in we the people. And if we don't start using we the people as the sample, the sample and the example of what we need to put in government, we're screwed. And by that I mean regular people, even like Donald Trump regular, and Trump's not very regular, but he's not a politician, right? The guy wasn't even a dog catcher. He had not run for any office. He'd bought himself a few politicians in the past. Very, very popular guy, great with the media. TV producer, had a good TV show. He'd been around forever. I get it. He had some skills that most of us don't have and had the ability to hone them over many decades. But he wasn't a politician. He was the local, builder. And I think that's important. And he's never lost that kind of local hometown perspective. I think that's what we need, right? We need that in Washington. We need more people that are like you, more people that are like many of our listeners that will say, you know what, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, throw on a tie or take my tie off or whatever it is, but to fit the mold of what they're going to be, whether it's going to be the mayor, the dog catcher, a congressman or whatever. People need to get involved in the system because the system is kind of deceiving us, right? You've got all sorts of weird things happening right now where people are suffering from a hurricane, and yet there's still talk about misinformation, disinformation, and fact-checking and whatnot. We have to do better. We just have to do better as a society, as a people. And I think that's kind of where I land on that one, Paul.
Yes, and what, we got a month now till the election. People just get out and vote. That's all I can tell you, man. That's the only way we're going to take it, and I'm a Trumpster.
Amen to that, Paul. Thank you, brother. I appreciate your call. Have a great weekend. Shout out to everybody listening on WHIZ, Zanesville, Ohio. And I'm going to pause right here. We're going to come right back with the rest of your calls and more. We've got calls from Chicago, WLS in the building. Who else? We got Salem, Arkansas, KSAR, Montana, KOFI, Idaho, KBFI, and more to come. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio's ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our quest across America, city by city, state by state. Let's see, where do I want to go? Let's go to Atlanta, Georgia. Check in with Steve on WGKA. Steve in Hotlanta. Go right ahead, brother.
Valdez, thank you very much for taking, my call. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I want to just kind of fill everybody in on what kind of a man that Donald Trump is, what kind of a man we have the ability to vote for to finally change everything that we know about the deep state and everything we think might be about the deep state. We've had 4 years with this man, and he did nothing but good for the country. Closed down that border. We saw what happened over the last 3.5 years. And then I want to, he was worth, his net worth was $3.2 billion when he became president. And then when he left, when he left, actually, without the new thing with his social media thing. But when he left, he had lost $1.2 billion. And then in that interim, he was impeached twice, and since then he has been almost assassinated twice, shot in the ear, almost assassinated, and on top of that, indicted 5 times, and has the probability of being, if none of that's going to go forward, none of it, it's all bogus, just like the impeachments, just like everything else. The man has proven himself to be someone who wants the America that we all want, which is the Constitution. The Constitution, and a lot of people aren't aware that Constitution is the most wonderful and sacred thing that's ever been invented in the history of the world. We have the right to free speech, and a lot of people aren't aware.
You're right, Steve.
In the world today
I think you're 100% right. And another thing is people really forget that, Trump lost money while he was in office. And let me tell you, this happens everywhere. My kid's in college, and both my daughters are in college, but my younger one, she sent me something the other day saying that there's some stories out now because of analysis on Trump's taxes that perhaps in 2020, of the 4 years he was there, that according to his taxes, it looks like he may have accepted a salary in 2020, and they're attacking him for getting paid and taking his salary in 2020 when he said and promised that he wouldn't take a salary. Now, other accountants have weighed in on this and said that it looks that way, but there's no way to prove this, that, and the other, and that, this is clearly people are trying to smear. Just imagine that, right? Instead of saying Kamala Harris has destroyed the border along with Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas, who's impeached over this, by the way. And we're going to ignore all of that and say that Trump didn't work for free and that this is the most egregious thing ever. The way we look at things has become so bizarre. So, Steve, I think you're 100% right. Trump lost money. He donated money to the Department of Education. He donated money to the United States Treasury. He also donated over $100,000 in profits from when foreign dignitaries stayed at the hotel that his family owned while he was president. Talk about avoiding any appearance of impropriety, right? Or at least doing your best to do it by donating the money to the Treasury. I couldn't ask for more. I've never seen anybody else do that. I think we've seen Biden profit hand over fist. We've seen Obama profit once he left the office, right? He's now the guy that's making more money than anybody, right? He's trying to compete with Elon Musk over here with all these Netflix deals that he has. I'm not trying to stop anybody from making money. I want to make money too. But my point is, we're not going to stop El Trumpito from making money, right? Everybody's got their hand out and trying to make a living. Let's let Trump make his living too. Great point, Steve, in Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Let me see. Where do we go from here? We're going to go to Lawrence, Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Go right ahead.
Hi there, Rich. I really enjoy your show. And
Thank
I
you.
listen to a lot of these talk hosts, and I won't mention the names. And when they talk about Trump being all these places and need all this extra protection, I know that there's a lot of talk that we have Army Rangers and Navy SEALs that were all sharpshooters, and they want to go to help him. You think the Secret Service doesn't allow that?
Listen, I know that they won't allow Trump to unilaterally make these choices. However, he's requesting help, and what they do is they utilize other government agencies like Homeland Security investigations, like the Federal Protective Service, that are kind of catch-alls that are you can use. They're federal militarized police, if you will, that they can use, and they've done that, and they did it in Butler. It didn't work out well. I think part of that was what contributed to the problem that these guys are good at what they do, but that's not what they do. They don't watch the president every day. And that expanded coverage that excluded, or I should say included, members that were not Secret Service of federal law enforcement might have been part of the breakdown. The other part of the breakdown was the fact that they weren't talking with local law enforcement. And if we go beyond that to say this is more than just a breakdown in communications, that we've got people at the top that are likely turning a willful blind eye, then we've got a problem. Now, I agree with you. Trump should get Army Rangers. He should get a Delta Force. He should have all sorts of the best of the best. And I'm sure he's fighting for that, and his team is fighting for that. And I'm pretty convinced and confident. Maybe that's naive of me to say, but I do feel good that tomorrow is going to go off without a hitch. I believe Trump will be very safe in Butler, Pennsylvania tomorrow behind his bulletproof glass with lots of support. I don't think the Biden administration can afford another mishap. I really don't, especially 30 days from Election Day. It doesn't seem like it's going to work at all. So I'll leave it there. Lawrence in Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Thank you for your call, folks. Coming right back, the rest of your calls and more. Speed Round. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. It's the Speed Round. We're going to go straight to our buddy Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Go for it, brother. Keep it short.
Thank you, Rich.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say real quickly, these two assassination attempts were, to me, in my mind, choreographed by idiots. You don't use a semi-automatic. If you want to be a professional sniper, you're going to use a bolt action subsonic 22. Trump wouldn't even have heard the shock wave or the sound wave prior to the ducking that bullet. So,
it reminds me of a quote, Frank. The quote was, if you're going to take a shot at the king, you better not miss. And I agree that was probably an amateurish move. However, I think it's part of something larger, right? Presuming that they succeed. If they succeed, they get to turn around and say, look at this, an AR-15. Oh, my gosh. Now, at least that's what the guy in Butler used. I believe there was a fully automatic AK-47, what was used in Florida, or at least what they believed. But I hear you. And I think part of using these people, what we talked about with General Holt was they're the ones that are available, right? These are the ones that they can con into this because they've got leverage on them. And when I say they, I mean federal law enforcement. That's my belief that they're being used in this capacity, just like everything else we've seen against Trump has involved federal law enforcement at one step or another. Frank in Evergreen, Montana, thank you, sir. Let us go now to, oh my goodness, we're out of time. All right, well, I'm going to give a shout out to Paul in Boise, Idaho, KBFI. He says pornography is the first step to hurting children. I agree with that. And Joe in Salem, Arkansas, KSAR, says government regulations on guns have never solved anything. You guys are both right. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.